Welcome. It's good to be with you this evening. A special warm welcome for our overseas guests, Mr. and Mrs. McGeough, Brian and Valerie, Mr. David Horan, Mr. Ian Rowe, from the great borough of the Bronx, where I was born and raised, an inspired and inspiring educator. And we're so pleased to have you here this evening and speak to the group. In addition to our honored guest, what should I say? Socrates is in the house. And I'll tell you how. In the Bronx, where I was born and raised, and I loved growing up there. Modest family situation, but it was wonderful, strong family. When I hear young people today talk about the school, they're traveling cross country to California here, they're looking at colleges, they have a first choice, a second choice, they have a safety, whatever that means. I know their parents are going to go broke. But anyway, we had no such issue. I knew without any anxiety where I was going. And that was City College, uptown at night. And it was wonderful. And all the students who came, they were either in the trades or in office situation or whatever type of work. They came to school at night to advance themselves. And that was after a full day's work. They had respect for the teaching and the teacher had respect for them. And it was wonderful. I took a course, an introductory course to philosophy. And in it, I met Socrates, Plato. I always thought of Socrates because it touched me. The survey course included so many of these prodigious genius minds that constructed a philosophy that I could hardly, it was almost impenetrable. To even figure out what they were saying, whether it was true or not was a whole nother matter. But with Plato, with Socrates, it was an instant connection. It resonated. It made sense. This was it. So from then till now, Socrates has a special place in my heart. And as it turns out, the first night I went to school, here, 85th Street. We were renting the space in White Door. I came out of the first session with a clarity of mind and a good feeling, but I wasn't sure exactly what it was. I knew I liked it. I knew this was for me, but I didn't have the language to actually describe what it was. Not too far along, it became clear to me. The experience at City College and the experience the first night at school was the substance was wisdom, and the method was reason. Clarity of mind, connection with wisdom, available to everybody. Nobody is barred from it, and it has to be a practical manner. Now, the founder of the school in England, Mr. Leon McLaren, at 16 years of age, goes to his father, who was a member of Parliament, and says, "What is your favorite book?" And his father says, "Progress and Poverty" by Henry George, which was at one time perhaps the second most sold book in the United States. But he goes and takes the book from the library and reads it. And after completing it, at some point, he sits by a lake, quiet, still, and the question arises, is there such a thing as truth? Is there such a thing as reason? Can it be known? Can it be taught? And the answer came, yes. And he resolved that he would start a school. He wasn't sure exactly what that would look like, but Platonic came to him, something in that order. And he resolved that when he was 21, he would start a school. And he did. It began with economics, but he soon discovered he has to go further. He has to understand philosophy. He has to understand the nature of a human being. And the school evolved. So when I say Plato or Socrates in the house, it's for real. Because it's been alive in this school since the beginning. We have active courses. We have dedicated Platonists in the school. And it's all relevant to developing reason, which is the light that can help you see your way through the world and whatever is presented in front of you. And it can be taught, it can be cultivated, it can be developed. So this is an auspicious occasion to have a gentleman who is the first person in 150 years to translate all of Plato. My goodness, what a fulfillment. What a fulfillment, what an inspiration. So, having said this, I will give 2 messages. Please turn off your phones. And following the presentations, we can finish up the catering and have a chance to meet David and buy some books, which would be a very good idea. Now I turn this over to your host and Master of Ceremonies, Brian McGeough.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very good. Thank you very much. I was told earlier this evening that if you have a different accent in America, people listen to you and take you seriously. So I hope that works. So you're very welcome here this evening. This is indeed an auspicious occasion, and Mr. Steingard nearly stole my words, but it is the first time in 150 years that a complete translation of the works of Plato has been produced. And this has been an enormous project lasting 16 years, and David Horan himself will tell you about that, a little bit more about that later on. You have my name. My name is Brian McGeough. I'm here as a trustee of the Foundation for Platonic Studies. That's why I'm standing here. Now, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the foundation, just so you have some sense of who is this foundation. It is a charity established a number of years ago, based in Ireland, with an international brief. So our work is not limited to Ireland. We're keen on spreading the wisdom and work of Plato across the world. That's the vision for the organization. And before we go further, it will be the foundation has sponsored the translation project, but there are also other people I should mention at this stage who without which we wouldn't have arrived here this evening. So we have to acknowledge the Newman Educational Trust, the Leon McLaren Art Trust, and Mr. Steingard mentioned Leon McLaren was the founder of the School of Philosophy. And of course, students in the schools of philosophy all over the world. In fact, a number of students in this room this evening played a big part in bringing this event to an event as it is this evening. And all this has been done with great generosity. In fact, the theme of this entire project has been one of generosity. So, now today, perhaps more than ever, the world needs the wisdom of Plato, the guidance of Plato. And the idea of the foundation is to foster and bring this wisdom of Plato to the world, to every aspect of life, especially the art of dialogue, the art of reasonable discussion. You don't have to look very far to see where this art is needed. In your homes, you need to learn the art of dialogue, the art of rational discussion. In your businesses, on the political stage, on the world stage, you don't have to look outside yourself in a way to see that there is a need for this art of reasonable, rational discussion, where people of opposing views can talk to each other in a way that unites them, brings them together. Despite the opposing views, there doesn't have to be a division and a separation because the views are different. And this really is what Plato has to offer. And the need is great. So the foundation is committed to supporting those who undertake research, scholarship, education relating to Plato and the broader Platonic tradition, particularly the next generation of scholars and researchers, and to work with them to make known the importance of this work to a wider public. We've already funded several PhD students and postdoctoral researchers in ancient philosophy. Now, we're especially pleased this evening to have Ian Rowe, our special guest speaker, who's doing remarkable work in the field of education, and in fact in bringing the wisdom of Plato to that world of education. But he'll say more about that shortly. Now, we invited Mr. Larry Arnn, who's the president of Hillsdale College, to come to this event this evening. And he couldn't be with us, but he has sent a message via a video link, which we're just going to hear now.
Hello, my name is Larry Arnn. I work at Hillsdale College, and I am pleased to say a word of support for a project that Dr. David Horan has undertaken. It's a massive and consequential project. He is translating all the works of Plato from Attic Greek into English, and that is the first time that has been done in more than 100 years. It's a monumental task. It's also an important task, and the reason is Plato is important. Why is he important? Well, Plato was a 4th century, 5th century BC philosopher, one of the first in Athens in its golden age, at the end of the golden age. He had a consequential experience for himself. He met a teacher by the name of Socrates. Socrates wrote nothing that we have, and probably nothing at all. What he did was go around and have conversations. These conversations were dynamite. Socrates was eventually killed for them. Their importance is demonstrated early in the greatest of all the dialogues called the Republic, which everyone should read. There are 2 young men in the dialogue who turn out to be Plato's brothers. Their names are Glaucon and Adeimantus. And in the early part of this dialogue, in Book 1, there's a sophist there, Thrasymachus. And sophists were people, many appear in the Platonic dialogues, who teach young people how to be powerful in speech, how to win arguments for power. Young men, young women too, like that. We all want to be stronger. And so he and Socrates have a little quarrel, and Socrates destroys him. Thrasymachus advances the proposition that justice is just the interest of the strongest person. Socrates is famous for saying the unexamined life is not worth living. I think there's a little thing in the middle of that all lives are examined. We think all the time, we people, trying to decide what to do, including what is the right thing to do. The question is whether we decide rightly. Socrates he replies to Thrasymachus, okay, tell me if justice is the interest of the strongest. Assume that you're the strongest person. Tell me, what is your interest? And that soon becomes, what is good for you? Questions have a way of resolving to the good, don't they? And he shows then that just what you want is not sufficient. It also has to be affected with what you ought to have. So that's very urgent, right? And that's a dialogue between Plato's brothers and Plato's teacher contending for the souls of those brothers against a sophist. Don't we all face that all the time? Probably the greatest record of those discussions of that kind, I mean, are written in Plato. I'm partial to Aristotle, Plato's student. Very great, too. But Plato was there with the man. To have his works carefully retranslated preserves a rich heritage, and it is an urgent thing for each of us to be in touch with that heritage in order to live our lives well. Congratulations, Dr. Horan.
Well, now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ian Rowe. He was a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he focuses on education and upward mobility, family formation and adoption. He's also the co-founder of Vertex Partnership Academies, a network of virtue-based international baccalaureate high schools inaugurated in the Bronx in 2022. The chairman of the board of Spence Chapman, a non-profit adoption services organization, and the co-founder of the National Summer School Initiative. He currently serves as a senior visiting fellow at the Woodson Center and a writer for the 1776 Unites campaign. He has an MBA from Harvard Business School, where he was the first Black editor-in-chief of the Harbus, He's a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, Engineering from Cornell University, and a Diploma in Electrical Engineering from Brooklyn Technical High School. One of the New York City's elite public schools, which specializes in science, technology, and mathematics. There's an awful lot more I could say about him, but I'll let you tell you that himself. Mr. Ian Rowe, thank you very much.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, champions of wisdom and virtue, and most importantly, friends of Plato. Good evening. Good evening. Brian, thank you for that kind introduction. Let me also add my appreciation to the School of Practical Philosophy for hosting this event. I took the intro to practical philosophy class about a decade ago. This was my first time back. It's still a special place. And also thank you to the Platonic Foundation for inviting me. It is an honor to stand before you this evening to celebrate a monumental achievement in the world of philosophy and human thought, the completion of David Horan's new translations of Plato's complete dialogues. For 16 years, Mr. Horan has labored with unwavering dedication, drawing from the ancient Greek texts to bring Plato's voice alive for our modern era. This is no small feat. As the first single-handed translation since Benjamin Jowett's in the 19th century, David's work stands as a testament to the scholarly rigor, generosity of spirit, and a profound commitment to accessibility without sacrificing the meanings of the original texts. Published by Platonic Foundation and made freely available online at platonicfoundation.org. I thought you were going to give yourself a plug.
That's to come.
That's to come. The translation ensures that Plato's wisdom is not locked away in ivory towers, but instead is shared openly with all who seek it. At a time when access to the knowledge most worth having is often restricted, David's decision to remove commercial barriers echoes Plato's own ideal of philosophy as a pursuit for the common good. It is this pursuit of the common good that underscores why I am so excited to join you this evening, to speak about why Plato matters now, especially to the rising generation, and to emphasize this concept that what is best for the best is best for all. So as Ryan mentioned, I join you tonight wearing two hats. First is as a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. I research the forces that drive upward mobility and how people achieve the American dream. I study factors like human flourishing and why a common set of virtues is a necessary ingredient to building a self-governing, free society. But my work is not just theory and research. I put my ideas into action, on the ground, operationalizing those ideas where it really matters in the very communities that we're seeking to uplift. So my second hat is that since 2010, I've led public charter schools, the first 10 years running a network of all girls and all boys, elementary and middle schools in the heart of the South Bronx and the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Our faculty educated more than 2,000 students across 6 campuses, primarily low-income Black and Hispanic students, with each year seeing an excruciatingly long wait list of nearly 5,000 families desperate for the opportunity for the children to get a great education. And now I'm proud to bring greetings from Vertex Partnership Academies. You have a couple of pictures of some of our students there. The virtues-based International Baccalaureate public charter high school that we founded and opened in the Bronx in 2022. I'll speak more about how we integrate Plato and the Platonic cardinal virtues into our school in a moment. But first, Why is David Horan's translation of Plato's complete works so important now? Why Plato in 2026, amid swirling digital distractions, political divisions, cultural upheavals, and now even war? Sadly, we gather to celebrate this momentous occasion, Plato's works being made more widely accessible, precisely at the moment when they are being diminished, if not eliminated, as a necessary part of a foundational education. In District 12, where Vertex Partnership Academies is located in the Parkchester Soundview section of the Bronx, approximately 2,000 students begin ninth grade each year in the traditional school system. Stunningly, only 7% of those students graduate from high school 4 years later, ready for college. 7%. This means that 4 years later, 93% have either dropped out of school, or if they do earn their high school diploma, they still require remediation in math and reading if they were to go to college. How can we accept this in our land of opportunity? In communities like District 12 across the country, the lack of school choice makes it nearly impossible for families to find high-quality options to escape these dismal outcomes. Even harder is finding a school offering a content-rich curriculum that uses classical texts like Plato to cultivate wisdom and virtue. A conventional belief holds that an education imparting the good, the true, and the beautiful, that's a luxury. But for these communities, those luxuries have to be abandoned for one more focused on basic proficiency. Moreover, at a time when superficial characteristics like a contemporary author's race or gender are prioritized over literary value, some of the greatest writers in the Western canon are being excluded from high school curricula. In efforts to quote-unquote decolonize the curriculum, school districts debate reducing or in fact eliminating dead white men like Shakespeare or Homer or Plato, deeming them outdated or irrelevant because of their race and gender. What makes these initiatives so tragic is that they deprive the very students who would benefit the most. They further disadvantage deserving young people with the least access to an education that cultivates moral character and transmits the knowledge most worth having. The urgency of preserving Plato's teaching is underscored by recent events at Texas A&M University just this past January. How many folks are familiar with what's going on in Texas A&M regarding Plato? Just a few. Interesting. So in Professor Martin Peterson's class, Contemporary Moral Issues, this is an introductory philosophy class exploring ethical theories applied to contemporary problems like abortion, euthanasia, sexual morality, and gender issues, and it goes on. The readings actually include passages from Plato's Symposium. As Greg Lukianoff of the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression noted, one famous passage in Symposium offers a haunting but beautiful idea that we as humans are in fact incomplete creatures, searching for other halves, with love making us whole and drawing us closer to the divine. Yet, under new policies at Texas A&M that were just adopted a few months ago, these new policies restrict discussions of race or gender ideology or any topics related to sexual orientation and gender identity. And if you do that, you have to have prior approval from the school. So Professor Peterson was instructed to remove these passages from Symposium, including the myth of the androgyny, touching on themes of love, gender, and human identity. Remove those passages or face reassignment to another course. The university ultimately clarified that Plato was not being banned outright, at least, just in this individual class. And it does appear in various other courses, but this instance of censoring foundational classical texts in an introductory class illustrates a very dangerous trend. When ideological filters are applied to timeless wisdom, even ancient thinkers like Plato can be deemed too provocative for young minds. Such moves risk depriving students of critical inquiry, nuanced exploration of human nature, and the cardinal virtues that Plato provides to navigate complex moral landscapes. It does not have to be this way. There is an alternative, empowering approach. It is an opportune time to echo the wisdom expressed nearly a century ago by University of Chicago President Robert Maynard Hutchins, who declared that, quote, "The best education for the best is the best education for us all." In the preface to the great conversation, The Substance of a Liberal Education, Hutchins laid out a vision that high-quality liberal education centered on the classics should be universally accessible, not reserved for an elite few. He wrote that, quote, "Until recently, the Western world regarded it as self-evident that the road to education lay through great books. No man was considered educated unless he was acquainted with the masterpieces of Western literature," end quote. Inspired by this breakthrough, Hutchins and philosopher Mortimer Adler introduced the Great Books curriculum to first-year students at the University of Chicago in 1930. St. John's College adopted it in 1937, and today it carries on the tradition. More broadly, in 2023, the James Martin Center identified 48 Great Books programs at public and private universities across America. So that's good. But what if K-12 education, especially in areas like District 12 in the Bronx? Sadly, all across the country, many of these great books and the writings of Plato remain virtually non-existent to students across the country, and in particular, low-income students. But we are seeking to change that. And now you can flip the slide. Because of its focus on moral formation, one distinguishing characteristic of our high school, Vertex Partnership Academies, is that it is organized around the 4 Platonic cardinal virtues of courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. These are called the cardinal virtues from the Latin root cardo, which means hinge or axis, because they are the root virtues upon which all other standards of moral excellence depend. So optimism, gratitude, resiliency, determination, perseverance, all of those emanate from these 4 cardinal virtues. And each virtue is an intrinsic life habit that we at Vertex are seeking to cultivate within each of our students. And the idea is that when normed and practiced regularly, these individual behaviors then form the collective basis of a good society, a community that is self-governed by public virtue. So I'm about to ask you to do something that our students do every single morning in the Bronx, not too far from here, actually. As the crow flies, maybe 4 or 5 miles, but it's a very different world. So each morning, our students in their beautiful blazers and ties, and we have Christopher Martin here, one of our teachers, our philosophy teacher. But each morning, our students recite what we call I statements as part of their process to internalize these virtues and cultivate their sense of personal agency. So I'm going to ask you to do what our students did this morning and do every single morning. I'm going to say the virtue, and I'd like for you to say the I statement along with it. Okay? Yes? Some enthusiasm. Yes. All right. Excellent. Okay. Courage. I reject victimhood and boldly persevere, even in times of uncertainty and struggle. It's very powerful words, especially in communities where students are constantly hearing messages of how victimized they are, or how marginalized, or how oppressed. We reject those ideas. Justice. I uphold our common humanity and honor the inherent dignity of each individual. It's very hard to demonize people when you always recognize their inherent humanity, regardless of race, class, gender, or any set of superficial characteristics. Temperance. I lead my life with self-discipline because I am responsible for my learning and behavior. Who's responsible for your learning and behavior? Is it Joe? No, exactly. This is part of the practice to understand you have a role to play in your own destiny. You can become an agent of your own uplift. Temperance. I lead my life with self-discipline because I am responsible for my learning and behavior. I love that one too. And then finally, wisdom. I make sound judgments based on knowledge of objective, universal truth. Not her truth, not his truth, not a truth, the truth. And we want our students to know that there actually is something called truth, and that the pursuit of truth is the greatest endeavor we are all engaged in. It's fundamentally what Plato was reminding us of. This daily ritual moves the virtues from head to heart, fostering, we hope, individual agency while also building a collective commitment to thrive as a community. Our core curriculum teaches timeless truths in pursuit of the good, the true, and the beautiful. All students train in the 7 classical liberal arts of the trivium and quadrivium, with explicit instruction in logic, grammar, rhetoric, and the history of philosophy. Following Socrates' pursuit of arete, human excellence, we teach students to engage deeply with fundamental philosophical questions. Reading Platonic dialogues introduces the art of dialogue and rational debate, skills increasingly rare in our society. Our philosophy students read the Euthyphro, the Apology, and excerpts from the Republic. They debate dilemmas, understand Plato's divided line, and consider ascending from the cave. Through Socrates' life and teachings, we develop disciplined thinking and help students avoid, hopefully, rash conclusions. By demonstrating our cardinal virtues through philosophical pedagogy, we show that philosophy is not only intellectual, but profoundly moral. We owe young people today the privilege to participate in the metaphorical great conversation that Hutchins described. It is our responsibility to ensure that the wisdom of the ages is inherited by the rising generation, by making the best education for the best for all. In celebrating Dr. Horan's work, we celebrate Plato's enduring call to virtue. This translation is not just words on paper, it's a tool for transformation. As Dr. Horan writes, it aims to, quote, shine the light of philosophy into dark areas of our thinking, end quote. For educators like me, it's invaluable. And at Vertex, we will incorporate these dialogues into our curriculum, sparking Socratic seminars where students question, debate, and grow. So why Plato now? Because in a world fixated on crises, Plato shifts our gaze to the right questions and thoughtful solutions. Virtues that build character, education that fosters agency, and excellence that benefits all. Making the best for the best available to all isn't hoarding opportunity. It's investing in human potential to create ripple effects. When we equip the philosophers among us, be they in the Bronx, next photo, will they be in the Bronx or beyond, they illuminate paths for everyone. Dr. Horan, thank you for this gift. Your translation revives Plato's voice, urging us to live examined lives. And to all here, let us heed that call. Let us build schools, communities, and nations where excellence reigns for the good of all. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful, Ian. Thank you. Magnificent, actually. Now, for the main event, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. David Horan. This is the reason we're here. This is the man that's given us this great occasion. David has spent 16 years translating the entire works of Plato. At the book launch, there was a similar launch to this in Australia, another one in London and one in Dublin, all just at the end of last year. And in Australia, the guest speaker was Dr. Anthony Hooper from the University of Wollongong in New South Wales. He described the achievement as monumental. And he went on to say that this translation guarantees that a future generation of scholars will once again fall in love with Plato. At the launch in Dublin, we had a Greek professor, Vasilis Politis. I'm sure there's two ways of pronouncing his name. He's a professor of philosophy in Trinity College in Dublin. And what he said about the project really stayed with me when he said it. He said, I don't understand how David did this. I am amazed. It's extraordinary. It's kind of superhuman. And as far as I'm able to see, having read quite a lot of it, it's always pure, accurate, and faithful to the original. Pure, accurate, and faithful to the original. Furthermore, it's clear that David understands Plato's philosophy, which is not always the same with translators. And I would say in that sentence is the real gem, actually. It's not just a translation of Plato's works, it's a translation of Plato's works by someone who really gets Plato. He has worked tirelessly on this project, never seeking any financial or reputational or any other form of reward. And in the same spirit, he's been supported by many others throughout the world. This endeavour involved people checking the translation against the original Greek. This would be people in England maybe, or in Australia. There was a group somewhere, they were the punctuation group. Imagine being the punctuation group for close on 900,000 words. You missed a comma. Someone producing an index, checking the index, someone proofreading the final drafts. There was a lot of people involved. Every student who ever attended a Plato class during that time also contributed to the project. When David would organise a summer school in Greece or in Ireland or elsewhere, all of those classes helped in this translation project. Also meeting the academics in Trinity Plato Centre, that also would have helped with the project. So there's quite a lot of people involved in this event. And everyone has given of themselves wholeheartedly. And there's been tremendous generosity right throughout. Now, David was particularly, no, he wasn't. He's very clear that the work has been so freely and selflessly given and supported that it should be readily accessible for everybody. And in that sense, Ian referred to it earlier, the entire dialogues are available free online to everyone. Now, you may be pleased to know that last year there were 64,000 people visited the website, the Platonic Foundation website, to read some of the dialogues. But in the land of the free, there were 30,000 of those 64. That's good, isn't it? That's here. 50% of all the inquiries came from America. Now, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to David Horan, a man of enormous talent, commitment, generosity. Please put your hands together for David Horan.
Good. Well, thank you all. It's marvellous to be back in New York and marvellous to meet you all and marvellous to have the opportunity to address these few words to you about this translation project. The structure of what I'm going to say is as follows. I'm going to begin by just telling you a story. It's a true story. It goes back about 600 years. I'll then present you with a philosophic quotation. It's from Plato's Philebus, which is at the very center of what I want to say this evening. And then I want to give you some of the background to this translation project and how it came about. I've been very impressed with what I've heard so far, very impressed with what I heard Mr. Steingard say about Socrates and the founding spirit of the school in which we're standing at the moment. Wonderful to hear Ian Rowe speak in that way about presenting Plato to young people. And in such a pure way, you know, it really is Plato. He hasn't modified it, he hasn't changed it, he has the four virtues. Could I have those four virtues back? I may not refer to them, but it's nice to be reminded of them. And it's just amazing to think that there are high school children just a few miles from here as the crow flies, who are reciting those Platonic virtues with such purity. He hasn't modified them. He hasn't dumbed them down. He's making them rise to the level of Plato rather than bringing Plato down and killing it off the purity and the truth. And his insistence there is truth, universal truth, not your truth, my truth. Your truth, my truth is anathema to Plato. He effectively stands against it. The works of Plato stands against this idea that we all have our own truth. Truth is universal and it's one. And it was marvellous just to hear that presented to young children. That's the legacy of Plato. That's the sound we want to put out. And it's just very, very heartening for me in offering Plato to the world as I can offer it, to hear that there are other people offering Plato to the world which needs it, and to students who need it, not elite students. Students from more challenging backgrounds. And as I said, it's not a dumbed down message. He's presenting a very, very pure message of universal truth. That's just marvelous. That's what this whole venture is about. We live in bewildering times. The history of this era will be written in 50 to 100 years' time, and then we'll really know what was going on. In the meantime, you know, it's just bewildering, and anything could happen. We don't know. But I'm going to go back 600 years in history, and I'm going to tell you a story of something that did happen. 600 years ago, an old man, aged about 80, left his home in the southern Peloponnese, where he was living in the southern Peloponnese, and travelled to Italy for the Council of Florence and Ferrara. That was in 1438 to 1439. He was travelling as part of a church delegation which was ostensibly trying to heal the rift between the Eastern and Western churches. Sounds like the motivation was theological. But the motivation wasn't really theological. The motivation was more political. Constantinople, the Eastern Church, the centre of the Eastern Church, was under threat from the Turks. So they wanted to heal the rift between the two churches, which had been in existence then for about 400 or 500 years. They wanted to heal this rift so that the West would come to their aid against the Turks. That was the idea. And the emperor led the delegation. He brought this man up from the Peloponnese as part of the philosophical heft behind his delegation. He had his theologians. He wanted the philosopher. The man in question was Gemistos Plethon, that's his name. He left a town called Mistra in the southern Peloponnese, and that's close to Sparta. You look out from Mistra over the plain of Sparta. So this old man made that journey from the southern Peloponnese to Italy, quite a journey in those days, huge journey in those days to make. And he arrived there. He himself had an objective. So we've got the apparent theological objective, we've got the political objective, and now we have an objective of Gemistos Plethon, who was, as you might say, old school. Now, how old is old school? He wanted to restore the pagan religion, and as far as he was concerned, Christianity, then 1400 years in existence, was flawed. An article recently by Ruth Webb describes Plethon's philosophy as follows: the religion of the day is invalid and should be replaced by one based on reason and ancient philosophers and lawgivers. So there we have all these people with all their various motives gathering for the Council of Florence and Ferrara. First thing that happened was they arrived in Ferrara. Plague hit Ferrara. So the Cosimo de' Medici, ever the opportunist, spotted the opportunity to move the conference to his town of Florence, thus aggrandizing his own town. It's like you landed the Olympics. So this was the theological, philosophical Olympics. He'd landed this great conference. What happened next was not planned by anyone. Absolutely not planned by anyone. Gemistos Plethon arrived, and he had with him a book. The book was the complete works of Plato in Greek, which he could read. There were humanists in Florence, and he started to give lectures there on Plato. Plato was little known in the West, reasonably well known in the East, but little known in the West. And Plethon started to give his lectures to anyone who'd listen in Florence. And these were transformative. They were electric. This man was the living embodiment of the teaching of Plato. And Cosimo de' Medici heard this philosophy. And he also heard about this academy that Plato had in Athens nearly 2,000 years previously. And he wanted that for his city. He wanted this Greek book, which had been brought by Plethon, translated into Latin so people could read it, because there was very little Greek known in the West by then. Latin had become the language of the West, Greek the language of the East. He commissioned the son of his physician, a young boy called Marsilio Ficino, to translate them. He gave him the education. He had him taught Greek so that he could do this translation. And Ficino translated all of Plato from Greek into Latin. And that was the basis of the Florentine Renaissance. No one planned that. All of these people gathering with all of their motives never dreamed that one up. No one thought of a Renaissance and a total change in thinking in the West brought about by the introduction of the works of Plato. So, I have this quotation. Oh, sorry. Just the details of the events are quite amazing. And by the way, it's a joke in one way. It's not a joke in another. This big event in Florence and Ferrara all those years ago turned out to be a book launch. But there was only one book. there was no printing. Printing came in around then. And among the first printed books in Western Europe were Ficino's translations of the Dialogues of Plato. There's a joke in one of his letters. My latest book is currently with the printers, or should I say misprinters. The technology wasn't that advanced. There was a student of Platon from Constantinople in the old days, a man called Bessarion. Bessarion stayed behind in Italy and became a cardinal of the Roman Catholic Church. Plato was now available in the West, but there was a danger that the whole thing would be dismissed as heretical. And if that happened, you were finished. But Bessarion was in the Vatican, and he had great influence. And he was a sort of a staunch, hardline Vatican man, as you could be in those days. But yet he loved Plato. And he protected Plato, and he protected Ficino as the translator. And so, because of this extra eventuality, which no one had planned, no one planned this, it survived. It didn't have to survive, but it did survive. So there it was. Platonism, available in the West, the center of the Florentine, the philosophic core of the Florentine Renaissance is there in Platonism. And as I said, Constantinople fell to the Turks shortly afterwards, not long afterwards, the very same year that Gemistus Platon died, according to some accounts. So, the question I have is this. Should we say that this so-called universe and everything else is ruled by an irrational and random power, and that things happen by chance? Or conversely, as our predecessors said, that it is governed by reason and ordered by a wonderful intelligence? It's a question from Plato's Philebus. And I think the more you can leave it as a question, the better. Angie Hobbs has written a book recently called Why Plato Matters Now, and she begins with a quotation, just on the cover page, she has a quotation from Plato's Theaetetus. Philosophy begins in wonder. So wonder about this question. This so-called universe and everything else is ruled by an irrational and random power, and that things happen by chance. Possibility number one. Pretty bleak. Or conversely, as our predecessors said, that it is governed by reason, the Greek there is nous, and ordered by a wonderful intelligence, the Greek there is phronesis. That's Socrates' question in the Philebus. And philosophy begins in wonder. So I wonder. Which is it? I think it's a question that can stay with you for life, and it can lead to a properly examined life. Is all this just random and happening by chance, or is this ordered by reason and a wonderful intelligence? That's Socrates' question in the Philebus. So I'll now tell you, with that question in the background, how this project got underway. And I'm sitting here listening to things that were said at book launches. I don't even remember them being said. And I look back on all this and I have this question. I have this question as a serious question. Chance or reason and wonderful intelligence? Which? Anyway, I was at a party in 2006 in Dublin. Someone came up to me. I'd been working on Plato, and the person said, listen, what would be involved in producing a new translation of the Dialogues of Plato? So, it's a party, I mean, come on. And thought thought for a while, I began to think of who could do it. And you'd need someone who really knew what they were doing, someone very knowledgeable, someone who's prepared to put in an awful lot of work. Thought of Professor Dillon, whom I knew well. I thought he's not going to be interested in taking that on. And eventually, I'm looking at the person. Eventually, I realized, oh, no. He has in mind that I'm going to do this. So I changed my line of response and I said, look, I work for an American multinational company. American multinational companies pay very, very well. They're generous. They look after their employees. I couldn't continue that. This would be full time. You get it, full time for years. So he said, that's okay. Leave that with me. That was 2006. 2007, he came back to me and he said, yeah, we're good to go. He'd put the support in place so I could stop working for an American multinational employer and he would support me. 2008, very early, I gave my notice to my American multinational employer. 2008 was a leap year, so the 29th of February, this is all embedded in my consciousness. The 29th of February 2008, I stopped working for them, and on the 1st of March 2008, I began working on the translation project. Very little happened that day. But there it is. For the preceding years, the reason why the person approached me, for the preceding years, I've been taking groups to Greece. I've been giving lectures on Plato. I'd done a lot of work on Plato. I knew Plato. How did that start? Let's go right back. I was about 21 or 22, and it was suggested to me that you should read Plato. Now, I'm starting much, much later than Ian Rowe's students. They're way ahead of me. But it was suggested to me that I should read Plato, so I got my hands on Plato's Republic. My background was scientific, so basically ancient means out of date, but I said I'd give this a go. Anyway, I trusted the people who recommended it to me. Started reading Plato's Republic, and for me it was a page-turner. I kept going out of sheer curiosity as to what was going to happen next. Plato's Republic was a page-turner. And it's important to say why. But again, sheer chance. Someone says, read Plato's Republic. I take it on. Sheer chance or ordered by reason and a wonderful intelligence. What amazed me about the Republic, first and foremost, was Plato as the writer was not trying to force his ideas down my throat. He was not trying to tell me what to think, but he certainly was making me think. That was what was most important. He was awakening reason and a questioning spirit within me. And in Book 1 of the Republic, and this has been mentioned already this evening, Book 1 of the Republic, Larry Arnn mentioned it. This character, Thrasymachus, appears, and he is negative about justice. Justice is for fools and simpletons. And if you want to lose out in life, and if you want to fare badly in the world, embrace justice. If you want to get on in life and be an achiever, cast justice aside, because the natural order is that the strong rule over the weak. It's a very ancient concept. It goes back to Thucydides' history of the Peloponnesian War. The strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. Thucydides and Plato are near contemporaries. The strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. All your laws, your so-called admirable laws, that's just an attempt to cage the lion. Without those laws, you know you'll be devoured by the strong. So you put these laws in place to curtail the natural order, and the natural order is the strong rule over the weak. They get everything. And that is this man's philosophy. And he gets so much space in that book of the Republic to express his views. Plato is writing this down. I'm reading it in astonishment. He can't be committed to this. I know he's not committed to this. But when is he going to stop bombarding me with this abhorrent doctrine. What's going to happen next? You're on the edge of your seat. Eventually he stops, and Socrates finally gets a word in. So what do you think he's going to do? Make a big speech in response, saying how appalled he is? No. He starts asking him questions. And I forget what word Larry Arnn used there. I think he has used demolished or annihilates.
Destroyed.
Destroys, dismantles the falsity that's buried in the middle of all of this verbiage, which has all of the emotional power going with it. You read it yourself, you wonder, where would you even start with the question? Brian McGeough and myself, we went to a thing called a Socrates Cafe in Dublin. We were invited. And I put this view to the assembly, because in a Socrates Cafe, you don't just lecture, you're meant to get them responding. So the first thing I said was, okay, how many people agree with Thrasymachus that the natural order is the strong rule for the weak? Now, strange, about 2/3 of the hands in the room went up. And then the other 1/3 were the other way. You hear from them for a while. Then I said, okay, fine. Now, next thing is this. You're going to be Socrates. Thrasymachus has expressed his view, and he's expressed it at length. Now, you've got to reply, but you're not allowed to make a speech. You've got to ask a question. So, that was harder, but they did very well. But that's the challenge. Telling people that they're wrong never really gets us very far. But the Socratic questioning dismantles the ignorance that's buried in Thrasymachus' doctrine. And you've also got to have the intellect to find it. Got to find. Just because there's a bit you don't like doesn't mean that's where the weakness lies. You've got to find it. You've got to be able to use the tool of reason, which again was described by Ian Rowe. You've got to be able to use that tool of reason, which is possessed by these students down in the Bronx, and which is fantastic. That they've even heard of it is fantastic. That they've even heard of the idea that simply making a speech in response is not necessarily even going to be effective. Plato knew that. Socrates knew that. You must basically dismantle, neutralize the ignorance. This was the drama I encountered in Book 1 of the Republic and thereafter as he goes on and works through the books. So, that's that. Now, let's just find out where we are in this script, which I haven't even found for the past 5 minutes. It's great that Ian Rowe covered so much of what I have to say here about why Plato matters now and what Plato has to offer to the world. I would be very much at one with him. When you begin to assimilate Plato, the message becomes pretty simple. And what cries out, even from the title, what I have translated is the Dialogues of Plato. Not the dogma of Plato. It's the dialogues, the conversations which took place, all inspired ultimately by what Plato saw Socrates doing. And there's one thing which you really have to give Plato huge credit for, and I've said this earlier to Ian Rowe, and I think he agrees with me, is Plato's ability to understand views to which he is not even in the slightest bit sympathetic. That's very, very hard to do. If someone starts expressing a view to which you're not sympathetic, really, you're going to find it difficult to almost enter into their mind so that you understand it as they understand it. And Plato could do that. That's why probably the Thrasymachus in Book 1 of the Republic did a better job of expressing Thrasymacheian views than probably Thrasymachus himself did. In the Protagoras, those very words are used. Or sorry, it's not in the Protagoras, it's in Theaetetus. Those very words are used about Protagoras. That Socrates has given a better account of Protagoras' views than Protagoras himself ever gave. That is important, because if you haven't really understood it in your soul, in your heart of hearts, you can't really begin to refute it. And Plato has that ability. The best account of the views of Protagoras are in Plato's Theaetetus, and that's where they're refuted and shown to be false. And that view is relativism. There's no universal truth, which is there. For Protagoras, there's no universal truth. It's what's true for you is true for you. What's true for me is true for me. And that is pernicious. Read the Theaetetus. So, there it is. I've just told you the story of what, by sheer chance or by ordered by reason and a wonderful intelligence, I was landed with in my 20s. That's what I encountered. So let me just come to a conclusion on this. If we don't heed these two messages from Plato, which have been captured very beautifully by Ian Rowe, and which I'm just telling you what's in the dialogues, if we don't do this, the world will head down a very, very pernicious and destructive path of argument and counter-argument, of people who don't even listen to one another, trying to defeat one another in argument. And I've been grappling with this, what the world needs, what the world needs, what the world needs, what the world needs for a few months now, because I've been faced with it because of these book launches, what the world needs, what the world needs, what the world needs. I keep coming back to something which I'd said many, many years ago. If people will read Plato, it makes such a difference. I think that's what I'm hearing from Ian Rowe. People will read Plato, it makes such a difference. Without anyone telling you that you could be mistaken, that your fixed views could be flawed, it begins to dawn on you that you could be mistaken and that your fixed views could be flawed. Because ultimately, you never let anyone else tell you that. That needs to dawn on you for yourself. And it will dawn upon you if in some way or another you can encounter Plato's writings. Now, I just want to conclude with a return to this theme and this question. And I'm going to reread this question from the Philetus, and I want to get it accurately. Should we say that this so-called universe and everything else is ruled by an irrational and random power, and that things happen by chance? Or conversely, as our predecessor said, that it is governed by reason and ordered by a wonderful intelligence? That's the question. It's a real question for me, a very real question for me, become more so. Of course, Plato favors rule of reason and wonderful intelligence, of course. But you have to arrive at that answer for yourself. Simply quoting Plato, so what? Quote. Good, I can do that. I'll give you another random event, or an event ordered by reason and a wonderful intelligence, which goes back 50 years. I started in the School of Philosophy and Economic Science in Dublin 50 years ago, last January, 50 years. And my wife, Frances, she started in philosophy the same month in the same year. And we married in 81, and she played a huge part in all of this. So there it is. We met, we worked together. In the translations, in the introduction to the book, you'll find this message with which I'll conclude. The unfailing support of my adored wife, Frances, is and always has been unwavering and selfless, and no words can truly express her importance to my life and work. So, there it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. We're just about to conclude matters, ladies and gentlemen. But I just want to, there's some presentations to make. If you just bear with me for a moment. May I have, I'd just like to ask Mr. Steingard to come up and receive something. This is really a very heartfelt thank you to Mr. Steingard for making this beautiful building available, and all the lovely helpers in the school to help with this event. Otherwise, there would be no event. So we'd like to present him with the Dialogues of Plato.
Thank you very much.
And likewise, Mr. Ian Rowe, what a magnificent presentation from him. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. And finally, there was a team of people in behind the scenes here working away for the last 6 months in making sure that everything happened properly, making sure people arrived here, and making sure there's food and beverages for you to have this evening, and everything else that goes with an event like this, right down to, look at those flowers.
Oh, yeah?
Those flowers, beautiful. And so I arrived here on Tuesday, and I came to the building on Tuesday evening. There were people all over the place doing different jobs, getting the place ready from there. Harry was moving chairs all around the place. And then he went on a cruise. So I don't think there's a direct connection. So, Laurie, where's Laurie? Laurie Howard is the IC. You have to move, Laurie. So Laurie has been the IC, handling and managing all the different elements of this, including having to listen to me frequently on the Zoom. So thank you very much, Laurie, and your team. So that brings the event, if you like, to a close, but there will be some book signing in the, I'm not sure what you call that room. To rear. Doesn't sound very elevated. In the rear of this room here will be book signing, and maybe a chance to ask Dr. Horan a question or two. Thank you very much.